Nabil Mauli here with us. Well, I mean, it's a privilege having you here. And again, Nabil, we've known each other for I would say since we started Palletized, and you've been a tremendous mentor and a tremendous support for the growth that we have had. Thank you so much for taking the time, because I know it's very valuable, and we appreciate you being here and sharing your knowledge and experiences with all our people.
Yeah, no, thank you, Max. Very nice to meet the team and the people that I don't know. It's always here Max always, and Billy told me here is like a family, and always I come here I feel like it's a family. So excited for the conversation.
Of course, I mean, and one of the things that I wanna and that we wanted to have you here for was discussing tendencies and what's going on in the market in terms of shipping, and obviously understanding that shipping is one of the biggest chunks of e-sellers in terms of their profits. And I just came from Manifest, and I was really surprised about things that are changing on the industry, and that I learned that priorities have switched tremendously for the buyers in the e-commerce industry. So as you know, the Amazon factor a few years ago was just you need to have everything now. Everything, I mean, no matter how much it costs, I need it now. And it seems like that trend is changing. It seems like it's running down on priorities. What can you bring to the table in terms of expectations of the consumer, in terms of speed for delivering orders?
Yeah, I think what you see is really that certainty is becoming more important than speed. So making sure that if you promise a next day or 2-day service, you actually reach that, and that you create that certainty. The race to the bottom of trying to compete with Amazon doesn't really work, right? Because Amazon can do things that most of the sellers can't, because they can do it. They can do they can run that business without making money, and that's okay because they make money from other areas like advertising, AWS, and so on. So they don't have the same challenge. But I think from the consumer side, COVID changed a bit the perspective, because during COVID, nobody pretty much was getting really, hyper fast deliveries, because all the networks were clogged. And I think most of the people realized that certainty at that point was more important than actually speed. And I think from then, what we saw is everybody was more focused on margin and to make sure that their business is actually profitable, as opposed to just sell more, increase the GMV, no matter what. And so that focus on profitability also has changed the focus of how brands are behaving. And we see more and more companies, they are going away from the premium carriers to go after alternative carriers that are cheaper and that can actually make more sense for the business. So I think that's a combination of what consumers are expecting, more certainty, and brands and merchants, they are trying to make more money, or at least make money. I'm talking about profit, not only GMV, and that as a result has created more alternative service levels, which are usually a bit slower.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, transparency for the consumer in terms of knowing, I mean, it's fine, I'm going to get it in 6 days or 7 days, but making sure that it needs to be delivered when you promise that it will be. So that's important. So having that transparency, right, as a seller.
Yeah, and also the traceability. I mean, if we ask this audience and you think about your own purchases, you're probably receiving more notification than you used to. Your order is being prepared, your order is on the way, and that is not just a coincidence. Is that many companies have understood also that if you are not going to do it extremely fast, it's more important that you communicate better. Sure. And so you see a lot of post-purchase experience software, companies like Nava, Parcel Lab, Aftership, these companies that give you more insights as to what is happening with your package, and that is increasing certainty on the delivery as well.
Of course. Those are amazing tools that obviously come with a cost, but definitely are incredible tools that provide that transparency and that capability for people to trace their package exactly where it is when it should be expected. And of course, if they have any kind of what's the word, like weather exemptions on the route. Mm-hmm. So you get text messages or these type of things. Nabil, obviously inflation in terms of cost has increased, shipping rates for certain carriers. How do you see that, in terms of costs affecting the whole supply chain, specifically for parcels in the industry? I mean, do you see prices keep rising, or is this going to be normalized, or what's going to happen in terms of costs?
Yeah, I mean, I think you should expect prices to rise in level of inflation at the minimum. In the US, it's really important to understand that the largest, or one of the largest player is the USPS network, and the USPS network is not a profitable network, which means that every time you use that service, actually there is a loss associated with it.
Subsidized.
It's subsidized, and one of the second one that is one of the largest one is also the Amazon network, which is also not a profitable delivery network. So there's a lot of subsidies, and I think the increase of cost is something to expect. Now, you see some companies, this is public information, so if you look at like UPS, for example, they just announced they were gonna split 50% of their total volume with Amazon. They were gonna stop it pretty much, and the reason is because they want to go back to more profitable business.
Sure.
And that is also in line with the other announcement they made, which is we also want to actually stop some of the services like SurePost, because of the changes that are happening at USPS.
Yeah.
So, and UPS is a very important player because in e-commerce domestic is one of the leading companies, no doubt about this, right, in the US. And so these changes tells you also that there are going to be some increases from the large parcel operators, but you have also alternatives carriers, right? You have companies like Uni, Jitsu. I mean, we were just talking about one that you told me. I mean, every time I come, Max is like, hey, do you know this company? I'm like, no, I never heard about them. Oh, they do parcel delivery.
Yeah,
I'm like,
and the thing is that it's a good thing that you touched on this specific point, and I wanted to get there, is USPS, one of the biggest elephants in the room right now in terms of what's happening. As you mentioned, SurePost, most of these split or hybrid services between traditional carriers like UPS or FedEx that they share, they move skip zones directly in their network, and then the last miles are being managed by USPS. If these big changes that we're expecting on USPS happen, like they mentioned probably privatization of USPS or changes in terms of the management or subsidizes. This is going to be a huge impact on e-commerce in terms of transportation costs.
Yeah, absolutely. So all the major carriers use that model.
Yep.
All of them or have that offering within their portfolio. And the reason is that they use that model to be able to compete and use their brand, technology, network, customer service, but they still want to partner with USPS because on the last mile or the last yard, it's so expensive to do that USPS makes sense. That is for sure, I mean, I say for sure, but it's going to depend who comes in because there is a change also. The postmaster, basically the CEO of USPS or the boss of USPS is leaving, and so there's going to be somebody new coming in. And the president, the current president, send different messages around privatizing, not privatizing. So this is also not clear. But if the USPS was a for-profit business, you can be sure that they will stop all this model for everybody. Because that's the biggest cost for them, and it makes no sense to do this. So they will stop that, which means like all the carriers will also have an increase of either cost, or they completely stop that service, which will give less options.
Sure.
Because
at the end of the day, for low-cost products that use this type of obviously cheaper services, this is going to affect their bottom line tremendously. I mean, it's going to get to a point that some products are not going to be just make sense to ship them out because, I mean, they rely on for instance, a ground advantage under £1, which used to be first-class mail. There's no way to compete to those prices in terms of, how aggressive they are, how reliable they are, and, obviously, this is going to probably be affected by these changes happening on the administration.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for the merchants, after what could happen is you end up having USPS and the large carriers, and then you're going to have to work with some regional players.
Yeah.
There's different like companies like Viho and Lasership as an example. Lasership is one of the largest carriers that doesn't use the USPS.
Yep. They do zone skipping, and then they have the regional hubs, and then
and it's their own network.
Okay.
So in their case, they are not going to be impacted, and they are pretty cost competitive. So they could be a company that benefit actually of that, because they have also a lower price point, and for the market, they could become a very good option.
So you see these type of companies rising in terms of getting bigger, consolidating maybe, expanding their networks within the US. That's amazing to know. All right, fantastic. Obviously, in terms of the consumer, and one of the things that we were discussing in Manifest was that, consumer right now is not willing to pay that extra premium to get those products faster. Mm-hmm. So obviously, in terms of how the e-sellers are going to start managing these changes and pivot for these regional carriers, I think it's going to be interesting on what's going to happen there. Amazon as a carrier, it's already available. I don't know if you guys know, now you can actually, us as a 3PL could develop a partnership with Amazon. They would pick our parcels every day, and they will inject these products on their overall network to deliver to your home. So how do you see Amazon getting in that sector? Are they stepping in too many things at the same time? Or, how do you see that competing against UPS or FedEx or?
Yeah, I think it's a good option. I think you have to recognize that they've built like a very strong network, and you have to recognize that they are a more and more logistic company. Yep. I think if you can get like a good pricing with them, they're obviously more aggressive because they want to capture market share, and they need to capture market share quick. And at that scale, you need to think big, and you need to have a lot of volume.
Yep.
So I think they're definitely like they're already one of the, if not the largest already, private parcel player in the US domestic market.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely an option that I think fulfillment companies and merchants, they should be considering.
One of my main concerns on that, and I want to pick on your brain on this, is obviously Amazon is getting into this right now, and I rely on this. And I start offering all of our members, all of our partners, these services, and tomorrow they change their mind. No, we don't want to do this anymore, because they pivot a lot, and they're a very agile company. Do you see this type of things happening, or no?
I think on domestic, at the end of the day, you probably all see it in where you live. My wife is an avid Amazon buyer. Every day there is in my street, there's maybe per day, there's 6 or 7 trucks that pass, during the day, either purely Amazon branded or some of their delivery partners. So I think on last mile, I don't see they're going to walk back, because they have that massive volume that they need to operate. They have made this massive investment in the network. It's there today, is their biggest competitive edge.
Yep.
I think it's as big as technology. So I don't think they're going to change the direction, because they have the network, they have the technology, they have the people. It's very unlikely that they will change their mind.
Okay. So that's something that we want to bring to our partners soon. So definitely, it's good to know that we can definitely rely on this type of new services for them, because at the end of the day, things are going to be pivoting and changing really fast. That's what I think is going to happen.
Absolutely. I think it's always, and it's funny, we had this conversation with Luis years ago on some strategy thinking. I think with Amazon, the only thing you have to think about is they have, generally speaking, in the past, used the strategy of I get you in, I get you hooked,
yep.
And then they are able to raise pricing. So you just want to think about that as to when you start to allocate volume, just keep that in perspective, because I don't think they're going to walk back, but they could be increasing pricing at a certain point in a meaningful manner where you might be too dependent on that. It's just something to, anyway, my philosophy on parcel is I don't necessarily think you should be putting everything with one single carrier, except if you have no choice. If you get really a great discount,
yep.
And that it's meaningful, then maybe it makes sense. But if you can, it's always better to use 2 options, at least.
Definitely, and also depends on geographically strategy, their hubs, It could happen because of reliability, or sometimes you need to commit to one because you need more volume in order to get those thresholds and get those rates.
Yeah.
So yeah, really hard. Okay, one of the biggest things happening right now, understanding cross-border trade. How are we going to keep playing in this cross-border era that we were from Miami, we were playing hard in terms of shipping either to Central America, South America, even Europe. But with this tariff or these situations that are happening, how does DHL, how does you think this is going to affect doing cross-border trade from the US to other regions?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to say now because it depends the response of the countries and the regions. China is taking a very different approach than what most of the people thought will happen, right? So the US is saying, well, we're going to remove the de minimis. And so everybody thinks, oh my God, the Chinese company are going to lose their competitive edge. But at the same time that the US announced that, the Chinese government launched a tax refund mechanism.
Okay.
So it's very important to understand that in China, in the 90s, they implemented a tax refund model, which is, in a simple term, is a commission.
Okay.
So if you export $100,000 of goods, the government will give you a tax refund of 6%. But that was not applicable for e-commerce.
Okay.
It was only for B2B transactions. But the week that they announced the de minimis changes,
sure,
China announced that they would do their tax refund system to e-commerce merchants.
I don't know if you all know about the de minimis and how that used to work in terms of doing cross-border trade from either Mexico to the US. I don't know if you can go into deep in this and how rules changed for people that were fulfilling orders out of Mexico down to the US.
Yeah, so it's actually not a US topic, it's actually a global topic. So every country has a rule on what can you import as a consumer where you don't pay tax and duties. In Europe, it's 150 euros. In the US, it was $800 until a couple of weeks ago. And so basically you could import as a consumer products below that value and you will not pay tax and duties on it. And this is a big topic because this was actually increased before Trump's first term. It was back in 2016. It went from $200 to $800. It was increased by at that time it was Obama that was in office, and Trump did not change it. He didn't reduce it, and that amount is very important for cross-border because when you sell products, you have shipping and then you have tax and duties, right? And so if you don't have tax and duties, it's a big advantage for foreign sellers to sell in the country when domestic sellers they have pay tax and duties, and then they might even have to pay other VAT and other taxes, domestic taxes. So it's a big benefit for international companies to sell in the US. So now they've stopped this, but I think the more important point is the opportunity for US to export remains very strong because I don't think all the countries are going to be able to retaliate.
Yeah, of course.
You saw what happened with Colombia a couple of weeks ago, right? And so the power play is probably not going to be the same, meaning like the US could say, we're going to put, a X amount of tariffs on certain products coming from certain Latin America countries, from certain Asian countries. There might be no retaliatory measures.
Okay.
And in that case, it means that for merchants here in the US, they could be exporting to these countries and have actually very competitive pricing still.
Okay.
So I think cross-border represents still a big opportunity for export.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things in terms of fulfillment and logistics I was mentioning was Section 321.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of brands in the apparel and fashion industry were fulfilling orders from Mexico directly inject those shipments instead of an international carrier. They would generate USPS labels in Mexico, but they would consolidate and ship in trucks, full truckloads, to the border, and then deliver the package with the USPS label in Laredo or anywhere in the border. So obviously their costs for their operations were very low. So it wasn't a very it was honest because it's totally legal to compete.
It was legal, but it was a loophole. Yeah.
But it was definitely a loophole and working because at the end of the day, you're not competing on the same terms as your competitors, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But so everyone was doing that. I remember seeing tons of players that were moving their hubs, distribution hubs from the US to Mexico due to that, and there was an increase in logistics in the border because of that. Is that shut down completely right now?
It's not completely shut down because you still can actually fulfill from Mexico, but you lose the in-Mex benefit. So that was an agreement. Actually, interestingly, this was actually stopped by the Mexican government, not even by the US government.
Wow.
And so I mean, I would imagine that there were some talks in the background between the US and Mexico around that for sure, but it was actually announced by the Mexican president. So that is, I think, for the US market means that you're going to see more fulfillment back into the US territory at the end. So for the US businesses, I think it's a benefit, it's beneficial, but for cost, it might have an impact. Major brands like Alo and this type of companies were doing that. True Classic, I mean, like big companies. So it was definitely legal, but it was, you know.
Of course. It was an advantage, obviously, and obviously if your competitors are doing it, you have to keep up in order to keep your costs at a level that's, sustainable, because at the end of the day, the consumer, the buyer is expecting, a high degree of services at a very aggressive price. So that's where brands need to be. Mm-hmm. Another huge, and I think it's even bigger elephant in the room, returns. How is DHL, how do you see the industry running returns and handling returns to be cost effective and obviously to provide that seamless experience of just, getting refunds back and this type of things? I mean, how are brands leveraging on carriers to handle their returns in a cost efficient way?
Yeah, so today, more than just the carriers, you have like multiple type of software that can help you to manage returns. I think returns is one of these things that, in fashion and apparel or consumer electronics, it's really, really relevant, but many businesses have not prioritized that because they were really more focused on increasing sales, increasing GMV, and it was like, this is the cost of doing business, and they've not put the right level of attention. But I think this is changing now because of also what we talked about earlier around, if you need to increase margin, you have to look at whether you do it. You can cut shipping costs to a certain level, but then you want to look at inventory management, you want to look at a life cycle of products in the warehouse, storage, aging products, returns. And so returns, I think now is more definitely to the top of the list. To do that, I think there's like a couple of things, right? One is you need to have like a partner. Well, you guys help multiple companies around that on managing the returns in the right way, to be able to really grade and see what is there, because if you don't do that, you take the risk of losing the entire value of the product. Of course, there are certain products, low value products. If the product value is less than $5, does it even make sense to ship it back and receiving it into a warehouse that then you have to destroy it, that also has cost? For sure not. But if your product has some residual value and actually can be resold, and most of your returns are still going back to inventory, then it's different. You have to really have a partner that can actually manage the returns for you, do some light value-added services, and then put back that product in inventory at premium price.
Of course.
But I think I've seen you guys doing many of these type of programs.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely one of the key points that we manage here for our partners, understanding that their products have a valuable, resellable price, and we try to at least recoup 80 to 90% of the merchandise that's coming back to Palletized. So we do a lot of apparel and fashion, and those are one of the key points that our members are looking for us to, process their returns in times, because they need to provide refunds or credits backs and get those items in stock so they can be sold again. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a key point, not only to Palletized. I mean, merchants are looking for this because they need this solution, right? And there are many players. Obviously, we specialize in apparel and fashion for those type of return processing, and we add a lot of value there. But one of the things that we've seen on the industry that's changing, same as to expectations on shipping, is expectation on returns are not free anymore. Because obviously, with the Amazon effect, everyone expected, when I return it, it's going to be free. I want my money back 100%. That's not happening now. We see even stores like Zara charging for returns, these type of things. How do you see that? I mean, is that a tendency?
Yeah, I think
Is that a trend?
if you're like a well-known company, I mean, there are companies that never offer free return. And the reason is that they have such a strong brand, and they have consumers that are willing to pay and take the hit on this type of conditions. I think if you have a brand, I'll be very, very careful to go and say, oh, Zara is doing it, I'll do the same, right? Because obviously there is brand awareness and power plays here, right? Zara, Nike, Apple, they can do things that many other companies can't do, just because there's no really an alternative to. I mean, there's always alternatives, but it is the power there of the brand is very influential in changing this type of policies. Yeah. And also, when you look at Zara, for example, Zara, when they change the policy, they still will give you the option to go to the store for free.
I was gonna go there.
And so that is a way also to drive traffic. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of thinking behind the way they do these announcements. But one thing that is for sure is you start to see there is multiple software technologies that now start to give you an insurance for return cost, right? There's a company called Redo, for example. And so think about it like the same. Then I'm a big user of Hotel.com. When you go on Hotel.com, before it was not that much, but now every single booking you do, not every single booking you do, but most of the search you do, you're going to get a price with a fully refundable option and a price without fully refundable option. And that's an insurance. The delta is just an insurance. And that's exactly the same process we see now in returns. Okay. Companies start to put that insurance on the checkout. So if you really know the product well, you know the brand, and so you're not going to pay for. But if you have a doubt, you're like, okay, $1, $1.50, I'd rather do that than maybe have to pay $10 after. And so I think that's why you start to see many of these businesses, they're actually very, very successful on starting to propose this. I think ultimately as a merchant, it's kind of obvious, but I see it all the time. You really want to look at the data, because returns, aside of being a pain, it's actually a big insight to the business. And many people, they don't think about it that way. If you start to look at the reason why people return product, the type of comments you get, why, from which zip code the products are coming back, what are your top SKUs that get returned, you're going to find out things too. You might have a picture of the product on the marketplace that actually have the wrong color, or doesn't look the exact same way than actually it is, or the sizing is off, or the product quality is bad. Right? I mean, there could be a lot of reasons also that can actually help you as a business but people, they don't think about this way. They think about I have these returns and
the consumer is just being spoiled or whatever.
The policy is like this, we just have to do it, and they don't even. And I'm talking top leading brands. You tell them what is the data you have on returns, they have no clue. Wow. They know how many they got. They know how many, but when you go down the level lower of what reason, what SKU, what percentage of SKU, within what range, from where they're coming back, all this, they don't have that insight. And you see also, aside of Zara, you see company like ASOS. ASOS is a very large UK fashion and apparel company. They start also to blacklist customers. And before, this was you never hear this. They are blacklisting customers. And so after a certain amount of returns, they tell you, thank you very much.
We don't want to do business.
We're done. And that is also, I think that is.
I've never seen that here though, in the US.
This is in the US.
Oh, really?
This is in the US.
Oh my God, that's interesting. That's amazing.
You're a good consumer.
Wow. Yes. Hopefully they don't.
Is anybody blacklisted? I mean, nobody's going to recognize it here.
I have seen FedEx. When we file a claim for a package, they tell us already if that person has
done claims in the past.
It's already marked as a scammer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those type of warnings are gonna start popping in plugins for Shopify as a scam order or fraud order. So these type of plugins and technology, as you said, for returns and for checking out on what's happening on that precise consumer, or if it's fraudulent, these type of things, it's amazing what's happening there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know this might sound a bit like polemical, but we've done multiple analysis of data on returns for many clients. The biggest factor of returns is actually not product, it's zip code.
No way.
It's zip code.
Wow.
I'm not going to go further. You can make your deduction on what it means, but there are certain areas. So if you think about like, well, what do you do about that, right? Because you cannot legally, you cannot block obviously a zip code, a street, or anything. You cannot do that. But what you can do is, if you're going to do digital marketing, exclude that zip code.
Yep.
Right? Like that you can do without entering.
So how do you get that data? In terms of, obviously from your return list, are there like public data that you can buy for fraudulent zip codes, or?
Well, that's what the carriers start to do within their own data. But there is a company that's called Deliveristic. I can look up the name if anybody's interested. But they are starting to aggregate fraudulent addresses.
Wow.
And it's still in an early stage. The company is still in an early stage, like a 2-year-old company. But they are tackling this problem of addresses. And again, you can't block an address.
Yeah.
In your checkout, you can't do that legally. It's impossible to do this. But you could then give a recommendation
not to target.
If you're going to put an address, delivery address, for example, that is high risk, then you could just change the policy on the fly.
Yeah.
And you could say, well, your address is not a free returns. And maybe that's something that is a good way to not go into a legal problem.
Yeah.
But you can do this. As a brand, you could change the checkout experience based on addresses, on zip codes. You can do that. And so these are the ways that this can be tackled.
What kind of data do you guys manage at DHL, or obviously as an industry benchmark, in terms of how many packages in dollars are being, taken out of garages or, in front of their houses? Or this is $1 billion problem, I understand, right?
I mean, in good value, we don't, these numbers are not disclosed by by companies, but 200 million packages are stolen with 2023 or something like this.
Wow. 200 million packages. So about one package per citizen, if you don't count the kids.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know who has experienced theft here, porch piracy in his house. Raise your hand.
Yo creo que...
Nobody? Okay. Oh, 1%.
Let's write that zip code down.
No. I did. The first time, not so long ago, like 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
Two guys passing in front of the house. They saw the package. They came running. They took them. They run.
Wow.
I mean, obviously in the US, very easy too, right? I mean, it's if you want to see porch piracy, you go next door and you see all the people are like talking shit about like what is happening on their porch.
Of course.
Everybody's sharing stuff about what's happening to them, and you see a lot. And I never realized, and the friend told me, oh, just put it on next door, maybe they find the people. And I'm like,
no, I think they changed that from a petty crime to now it's like a further crime that it used to be in the past. I don't know what's the proper language to it, but I know that's a very bad offense right now, not as it used to be. This changed I think like 2 months ago. Yeah. So that makes sense.
But you know how you know that it's actually also a very common thing? You raise a claim and you get the full refund right away.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that says it all.
Yeah.
Because if it was not, I mean, it was like in a heartbeat. And of course, it never happened to us. Yeah. But I imagine if I do the same thing next week, and the week after,
Yeah, of course.
then right away you get
I mean,
you
one
get
of-
flagged, obviously. But since it was never the case, and my wife buys 25 packages per day, it was hard to be flagged right away.
One of the things that has helped a lot of our merchants and shippers is we have cameras on the pack stations, and we get their consumers saying, "Hey, we got instead of two, we just got one," and we have the capability to actually film down the packers packing that order, shipping that order. You can see even the name of the person on the shipping label, and that package being placed on the gailers that are going to be with the carriers. So this is a way to prove sometimes you even give the refund because you don't want to tell that he's a liar, but you tell him, hey, it's been packed, it's you can see it here. So sometimes when they send those videos, they don't reply back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that visibility as well adds a lot of value to certain brands that are more into getting this type of claims.
Yeah.
Ghost claims. Yeah.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you never. It's always there's multiple parties involved into the process. But like what you're doing in terms of like taking this is very important because it gives also to the brand the peace of mind that from the warehouse it was safe, it was well packed, and you can even show it to the consumer and say, hey, look, this is then nobody is tracking the package real time. So if this happens, also it's a good way also to show to the final consumer and say, it was well packed.
Yeah.
If something happened on the way, we will replace it, or then it's a commercial decision.
Yeah.
But packages get stolen also on the way.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Get stolen also on the way.
they could have damage as well because obviously we know carriers, unfortunately drivers, when they're lifting heavy stuff, they just throw it. And this is something that we get with larger item and bulky items. But there is the importance of your partners as carriers. If you have insurances, if insurance is included on your freight costs, for instance, FedEx for us, we have $100 insurance in everything that we ship out of Palletized, so which is very attractive for our members because if anything gets damaged on the way, they're gonna get that back without paying for an extra insurance, right?
Yeah, that's the way to do it. I think that's the way to do it to protect because you can minimize, but you cannot ensure 100% of the cases, and it can be a big loss for the merchants, right? And also you get a consumer that is disappointed, and it's just a bad experience. But you have to neutral packages, the cameras that help you to validate that it was well packed and so on. These are all great ways to minimize the impact for sure.
Amazing. Now, I want to think about the future. What's happening with AI, robots, drone deliveries, the future of shipping. How are we going to deliver our packages to consumers?
I think I think the biggest thing really is going to be autonomous vehicle.
Okay.
I think you're not going to see anything truly game-changing until autonomous vehicle. And autonomous vehicle is not something of the future. In the US, I was in San Francisco maybe a month ago, and I was amazed by the amount of autonomous vehicle that they had already on the road. I was the only guy actually was surprised also. Everybody was like, this is normal. And it's not that long. By the way, we're going to have them in Miami too because
I saw some test vehicles already.
Yeah.
Jaguars, right?
Yeah. But they're going to launch Miami, I think, this year actually. Okay. They're going to launch full autonomous vehicles because they have vehicles mapping Miami already for 10 years. But they're going to launch and by the way, this is like full scale operation.
Yeah.
It's not testing. I mean, they already had I remember I went 2019, they already had test vehicles that didn't have a driver, but there were very few.
Yeah.
But in this case, it was they even have like terms now, Waymo traffic jam, specific because when everybody orders the autonomous vehicle at an event, for example, they all come.
Yeah.
And they all come one behind the other, and so. I think
So that's going to happen to your wife when she starts ordering the packages.
exactly. Like 5 vans coming in.
No, but seriously, okay, autonomous vehicles, drones obviously it doesn't apply because if you live in an apartment or anything like that. But autonomous vehicles, at the end of the day, you're going to need the human factor to actually place your package in front of your door. Is that going to change? I mean, I see that we look into these fancy solutions, but at the end of the day, someone has to put the package on a third floor in Hialeah, or it's not always gonna be as easy as just having the Brickle robot that's the one that's running around with the food. It gets to a point that are we really gonna be able to automate the whole process?
No, I don't think when I think about this, I don't think about the automation, but also I think that's something that people get. It's not like either everything or nothing. If you just look at a delivery operation of a driver coming into your street, what you're gonna notice is actually what takes the highest amount of time is for the guy to go back into the vehicle, switch on the car, move to the next house, go down to the vehicle,
Wow.
and so on. And so even with like you don't even need full autonomous level 5, which is the highest level of automation. You don't even need that. At level 4, you can have a vehicle that is just assisted driving, and the driver doesn't need to go back inside.
There you go.
And that will drive the cost down of shipping, like at least 30% right away.
Wow.
Because you're going to find like huge efficiency on the highest cost bucket, which is the driver.
Okay.
The driver is the most expensive, then the second is the vehicle. And so if you can really optimize that, you're going to have huge savings. The driver doesn't need to go back into the vehicle, and he can just drive down the street based on what is the orders, what are the stops, and you could have all this, and this is not like, I'm not talking about like 5 years away. The focus has been on passenger cars, but I think it's going to be very, very quick that we're going to see. Just if you think about electric vehicles, Amazon they said they were going to buy 100,000 Rivian vehicles, right? Mm-hmm. And they had exclusivity for some time. In Miami, you only see Rivians, right? And this was not like 20 years ago. It was like 4 years ago, maybe 4 or 5. And so, in a 5 years lapse time, you can really see a big. And the reason why I don't like to go into like too much of the the potential, yes, AI application and so on. But if you say like what is going to change really the game price-wise, and also in terms of service, I think that's the thing that's going to change. Of course, customer service, data capture, multiple automation around proof of deliveries and so on. These are going to be, but this is not going to change dramatically the way the models work. It's going to automate one process here, another one there, You might have seen them at Manifest, but the guys of Happy Robot.
Yep.
So these guys are probably right now the most advanced in AI true application in supply chain, particularly for customer service, dispatching, and so on. And they have a real solution.
Yeah.
It's working, but they are probably the only ones that I've seen right now with an application which is incremental. Again, you're saving money on the people that are doing that work. But to your point, you're not replacing either 100% of the people yet.
Of course, and that's incredible, mind-blowing how just collaborating to that level of technology, how you can increase productivity and efficiency, lowering costs, and obviously being faster and more reliable, which is what the consumer at the end of the day is expecting, right?
Yeah.
To conclude, Nabil, I think it's been amazing topics. We're gonna have a Q&A after we finish, but. Just to conclude, what would your advice be for e-sellers, on a medium level size company, a small to medium level size company would be in terms of their operations for the long term? Obviously you guys as DHL, you guys provide solutions in an entire array of services, not even just shipping, you guys do fulfillment as well and many other solutions. So for these small, medium-sized companies, what would you recommend in terms of their logistic proposition and their logistic operation?
Yeah, so I think the biggest recommendation would be to work, with the right partners, right? And the right partners, it's a bit like a husband or a wife, it's dependent on what, your expectations are and what you want. And I think for like medium-sized businesses, it's really important to find partners where you get the right level of attention and the right level of also of commitment and expectation, right? I always said, and Max and Billy and I, we always have had this conversation in the past, is like, you want to work with a partner where you have direct access to the CEOs, where you have direct access, where you're important for that company too. When you go too big, in terms of like partners, the problem is you are at the bottom of the list, and that is not good, right? And that is a problem, because when you have requests, special requests, oh, I want this customization, or I want, hey, can you do this for me, or can you do these value-added services? The larger companies will not be willing to do this, as opposed to when you do business with a partner like you guys, right? And I'm not saying this because we are here also and hosted here, but I truly believe this. You have to think about this. It's interesting. I had lunch with the head of supply chain of, I don't know, this is recorded, I don't know if I can do, but I had lunch with the head of supply chain of a food retail plus online business, which does $300 million of business in the US. And he was telling me that they were working with Lineage in all the frozen warehouses and delivery and so on. And he told me we changed, and I said, why did you change? He says, because we saw that the level of performance was getting worse. And I'm like, when was that? He's like, just like recently and so on. And I'm like, Lineage is one of the leading company in frozen food, warehousing and so on. It happened that they went IPO last year. It was one of the biggest IPO in the US. Obviously, a lot of people became rich and did very good. But what happened when you have that, oftentimes, is that all these people, their level of commitment also, they get distracted, right? I mean, I'm not suggesting that, that company is going bad on all dimensions, but his point was, my service level is getting worse. I need to change. They're not giving me the attention I need. And it's a $300 million company, like 60 stores, and so on. But again, they were becoming too big for them. And so he said, I'm going to change, and I'm going to go to smaller, to a company that's going to take care of my business.
Adapt to, at the end of the day, it has to be a perfect match, obviously. Exactly. And we say that to potential partners that we meet and discuss their needs and stuff. I mean, sometimes we're a match, sometimes we are either too small or we're too big for them, which is, it has to be the right partnership, as you just said.
Yeah, exactly. And the same for the partner 3PL, also the same, because if somebody comes and tell you, I just want to, store for 6 months, a product, and then there's not going to be movements, you might say, what, it's not really the business we want, right? That's not good for us. And then, that's so I think the biggest point is to find the right partner for your business. I think here, from everything I saw, and the team is amazing. So obviously I would recommend here, and this is on a natural basis. And I think that's my comment.
Amazing, Nabil. Thank you so much for being here. All right, Nabil Nauli, Senior Vice President of DHL's eCommerce and Returns. Guys, now we go to a Q&A. If you have any questions that you think that could affect your business in terms of shipping, logistics in general, supply chain, please feel free. This is the moment. Nabil, I think, is going to be charging $10 per question.
No, even if you want to ask stuff that we didn't talk about,
please.
In your mind, like whatever. It's
Nabil, that social commerce is changing pretty much everything from my perspective. And recently, TikTok launched a program similar to FBA. By any chance, do you know anything about it?
Yeah, so I think
could you repeat that question?
Yeah, so the question is, TikTok launched a service similar to FBA. If I have any insights around that. TikTok has been doing RFPs for facilities in the US and in Europe already. They had started, actually, this is public, right? And we can definitely talk about this. they had this alliance with ShipBob, which is one of the providers of 3PLs in places like Chicago and so on. So they had that, and they were providing some level of fulfillment, but primarily for merchants that had the request, right? Not really as something they were doing proactively.
Open.
But they were doing, in parallel of that, they were doing RFPs also for fulfillment of their own. And so I think what they are going to be doing is they're going to expand more and more, because they understand that some brands, they just don't have the capability. I don't think that they look at that as a like a great business. I think it's just the Amazon model work. Today, people also do business with Amazon because they simplify the life of the merchants. So I think, I don't know if it responds to the question, but I think they're going to launch, I'm convinced they're going to launch like a more formal offering around that, not for international sellers, for domestic sellers. It's also important to, oftentimes people, they think about like Shein, Temu, TikTok as like only products that are coming from other places. Yep. It's changing very fast. It's changing very, very fast. Yep. A lot of the sellers are actually already with inventory in the domestic market. I'll just give you a statistic. It's not US, but in Brazil, we manage the fulfillment for Shein. 60% of the products are domestic Brazil. Wow. 60%. I could not believe that number also. And so that is the path. That is the path. Because people also tend to think like, oh, this platform, they're only about cheap stuff. And it's not true. Even me, that I'm an like consumerism and so on, I end up buying like products that are useless, on these apps because the gamification and and there's a lot of technology behind that you just don't realize. It's the same that when you use social media and you spend like half an hour ending up of watching like videos of football, of like games of 10 years ago, and then you're like, why did I lose 1 hour? It's because the technology itself is built for
hook you up.
Yeah, it's built to hook you up. And so the point I'm making is like this platform, they obviously have a lot more than just cheap products, and they're gonna do more and more domestic, and they're gonna open more and more to domestic merchants. And one last thing is Amazon has become, like, I think the biggest risk for Amazon is Amazon itself. Yep. They've become very, very expensive. It's very expensive for sellers to sell on Amazon. And if you look at like just the referral fee or the commission they take, TikTok, when they launched at 2%, then they increased it at 8%. Yep. But it is a massive difference still today between selling on that platform, which has huge traffic too, and selling on the marketplace. You get less, but you get to sell.
But I guess that's part of being so big and adding so much infrastructure into your game. Then you're adding overhead into your structure, and you need to pay for it. So Amazon went big, like tremendously big, and I admire what they've done tremendously. But it gets to a point that's going to kill sellers if it's not always makes sense to sell on Amazon, even though it's an amazing platform for get exposure to your products.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have experts here. Luis could give us like a class to all of us on selling on Amazon, no doubt.
He's gonna be here. He's gonna be sitting here soon.
So no doubt, I'm sure there are many other people that have a lot of experience in this. But it's just became quite expensive, and so the other platform, they know that, and that is a way for them also to get in. But fulfillment still remains a challenge for the brands, for many brands, for smaller brands and so on. So I think they are going way more conservative than most of the companies, right? I mean, it's not like not a big bang announcement of we're gonna do this. But you probably in your neighborhood and so on, you probably have already sorting facilities of TikTok, probably of Shein, and probably of Temu that you just don't see. But they are there in your neighborhood, probably already.
Yeah, we have one just really close by. Yep. Any other questions, guys? Preguntas?
A little bit about diversification of carriers in the US. Can you comment a little bit? Because still a lot of specifically US brands, they want to use the DHL or FedEx or UPS. How do you see that changing now with the, you mentioned Uni, earlier Max?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I personally think that if you have a business, you should be looking at having one of the core carriers, maybe or two, as an option, because it gives you capillarity, it gives you multiple service level. Right? I mean, if you want to do next day air in the US, I mean, there's no many options. You have to, right? And so if you want to offer that into your website, ultimately you have to have UPS or FedEx into the mix. But I think the regional carriers, if you're going to do Florida to Florida, northeast to northeast, southwest to southwest, Texas to Texas, I mean, you have as good as the large carriers option.
Yep.
And depending on where the volume is, you should be really looking at, particularly for the regionalized volume, they are as good operationally as the large carriers and much cheaper. So my recommendation is definitely to evaluate some of these players depending on the volume mix and try to cut a deal, because they are also more aggressive too. And the reason they are more aggressive is that most of them operate on gig economy model, as opposed to fixed infrastructure and fixed cost. And so you don't have unions, you don't have large infrastructure, you don't have large corporate overhead. You can do pricing that is much more aggressive.
Most of them are getting funding. They need to grow sales. I mean, they need to keep growing. They need to keep expanding.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think, I don't know if it's an answer, but yeah, I will definitely recommend. Now, which one do you work with? Maybe just, it's hard, but I think it depends on the volume, where it's going, where it's coming from. Today, aside of the big like DHL, FedEx, UPS, and USPS and Amazon, the next one that comes is LaserShip. Yeah, that would be the next one in terms of capillarity, lower price, and then it's like after that is really like the regional, like a Viho, Axel Hire, LSO, and Uni, Jitsu, First Mile. I mean, there's a couple of them, but you also don't want to do business with 10. Because then it's just like it's more complex to manage. You need to have more contracts and all this. And frankly, I don't think you need to either. You want to look at like your big volume, where it's going, and address that. That's where you're going to get the savings.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so.
Go please.
We spoke a little bit about LATAM. Have you already started seeing more interest from Argentinian consumers and starting to buy now remotely and buy more from the US, or is it still an early phase? Or?
Yeah, we were talking with our friend from Aerobox there. Yeah, so I think I mean Argentina is obviously going through a transformation phase, right? We're not going to go into politics here, but I didn't bring a chainsaw, just so we are clear. But it's going to open up the country for sure. I mean, there's definitely there's going to be an opportunity for business.
It has been a change already on the de minimis for them, right? I believe on duties.
I'm not sure actually.
There has been a change.
$400.
Fine.
To $400, no duties.
No duties until 400.
Import up to $3,000 every day.
Oh, so you could 5 times a year is up to $3,000.
First $400, no duties.
Okay.
And then after that, it goes by product. But they're changing every week. They're opening up every single week. You have something new.
Yeah.
So it's getting very interesting.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of RFPs in terms of shipping to Argentina as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Mercado Libre also is public, right? They definitely opened up the outbound from US into the countries, right? And Argentina is obviously a big one.
And Knock Knock, Tienda Mía.
They were doing this already, but they had a lot of limitation. I think now it's going to remove a lot of the limitation. So yeah, I think Argentina as a destination. I mean, to ship in Argentina, aside of the regulations, I mean, you have multiple paths. You could use options like Aerobox as an example on getting like cheaper, probably cheaper, more competitive like pricing, or then you can go to the traditional carriers and shipping in the country is actually it's not a country that you can ship into it. There's of course a bit more regulation, but it's not that hard to get products into there.
I think Chile is harder, huh?
Yeah, I mean, with the former, I think, government, I think Argentina was probably still a bit harder.
Yeah.
But now this is changing fast.
Okay. Any other question, guys? No?
I mean, we're going to be here too.
Yeah, of course. Let's grab us. Let's grab a beer.
So,
Nabil, thank you so much, my friend.
Yeah.
Really
thank you.
appreciate having you
Always a
here.
pleasure.
We're super happy to have you here, and
Gracias, thank you.
anytime. Gracias. Yep. Wow. Ajá, la música. Nabil le gusta el reggaetón, así que le vamos a poner reggaetón.
Es cierto, aparte.